Hey, what's up, guys? It's your girl, Poppy Britt, and welcome to the Platicando con Poppy podcast. If it's your first time here, then welcome. And if you've been here before, then welcome back. We have a very, very, very special guest today. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming. You're literally like one of the top people I had on my list when I said I wanted to have people on my podcast. You were literally like up there because you do so much and you're so cool, and I can't wait to like talk about it and for people to see all the dope shit you do. But anyways,
thank you. No, and it's I also want to congratulate you for just like seeing you. You know, we've known each other since college, and we have. There's been many iterations of us since then. So it's been so beautiful to just kind of see your determination and like trying to build something for yourself that is really aligned to your heart, and people really resonate with your story. And so that's a really beautiful gift that you have.
Starts crying 30 seconds in.
Already like healing.
Yeah, literally already immediately. But yeah, this is Valeria.
Yes. Oh yes. Anyway, yes.
Yeah.
So yes, my name is Valeria. I am a psychedelic facilitator, a retreat curator, and a plant medicine advocate. I am a curandera, a medicine woman, and also a human. You know, I'm skin and bones, and still a learner of life and the medicine and the path. And so I'm just here to share a little bit about what I do and hopefully inspire people in some capacity.
I was gonna ask you like what you say when people ask you what you do, like your elevator speech. I love that.
Yeah. And I also do want to acknowledge too, you know, what a privilege it is, one, that we live in Colorado, where there is a psychedelic space where we can have these conversations openly. You know, we're moving a little bit more towards the legalization of these practices. And so I also do want to acknowledge that I do have a lot of privilege for entering the psychedelic space in this time. And a lot of privilege to, you know, have been able to travel to Mexico and to South America and spend extended periods of time there learning the ancestral ways of using this medicine and understanding that the war on drugs had a really big impact, especially in the community of color. That we're growing mushrooms for healing purposes and, you know, are incarcerated or you know, are still incarcerated because of marijuana. And so I also want to name that too, that I have an immense amount of privilege to be entering the space in this time, in this context. And I'm also so blessed and also so thankful for the past curanderas that have kept this tradition alive. You know, I work primarily with mushrooms, with the psilocybin, the Niños Santos, and those traditions were kept alive in Mexico because of, you know, medicine women in like remote mountains that still kept this tradition alive. And, you know, I wouldn't be able to have access to that if it wasn't for them. So I also want to acknowledge all of that before we get started.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But yeah, I like you mentioned, we've known a lot of different versions of each other. We met in college. She's actually my sorority sister. So for the people that don't know.
Shout out to the Lambdas.
Yeah, we're part of a sorority, Latina sorority, and that's how we met. But then we became roommates after I graduated. But
that was a rough time for both of us.
Yeah, it was an interesting time for sure. I had just graduated college, gotten out of a relationship, living in Aurora where I like knew nobody. And, yeah, I'm sure you had your own stuff going on too. So
I feel like that's when like my PTSD was like really alive in my face, where I was like, holy crap.
So I've been meaning to ask you because I feel like we haven't seen each other in a long time. I know you. I thought you really started with yoga, right? And then it kind of like. Yeah, you ventured into other spaces. How did this start?
Yeah, so I guess I can like, oh man, I feel like there's so many avenues that I can take this, and I'll try my best to just share as much as I can. And sometimes I like ramble and I can jump timelines.
Yeah, so no, it's like, okay. Same. I like ramble and then I like come back like 30 minutes later and I was like, oh, and that's where I was gone. So
perfect.
Yeah, you're completely fine.
I'm sure that's also like why you love doing podcasts, you know?
Yeah.
You kind of just go in
talk
different ways.
Yeah, and just go with the flow.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. I was officially diagnosed with complex PTSD in 2019.
Yeah, that's literally
Yeah, bro.
Right as
right.
I grad. Yeah.
And it just like took me a while to really come to terms with the childhood experiences that I went through, and the harm that I had experienced. And I don't think I was really in a point in my life where I was ready to face all of that pain that I had gone through until, you know, spirit has a funny way of like really making you so uncomfortable that you have no choice but to be like, fuck, I guess I really
dig
have
deep
to.
inside and be like,
Yeah.
you can look all the way out and be like, what is wrong with the world? And then you gotta be like, hey,
well, and it's
let's
also
look
like
inside.
exactly, and you know, the common denominator in our life experiences is us.
Yeah.
So to some degree, it's like, yeah, you can, of course, we're not responsible for other people's actions towards us, but we do have some responsibility to do the inner work and the healing. And yeah, I got to a space, I think 2020 was really when I was like, okay, there's no way around this anymore. And really, I had been going to therapy for a while, but I think with like just like anything, and when I talk about plant medicine, when I talk about ceremonies, these ancestral practices, it's all the same. You know, in therapy and all of these practices, what you put in is what you're going to get out, and what you're ready to confront is what you're going to heal. And so I had been going to therapy, but I kind of had been like bullshitting, you know what I mean, where I'm like, oh, why am I so anxious, why am I so sad, what is your relationship with your parents like? And I'm like, oh, no, they're fine. We don't need to talk about that right now. But why am I so sad though? And it's like, girl.
Yeah, I think it's that discomfort, right? Because you don't want to like really face those things because it hurts sometimes. Like it's very like it's a lot to face, and so it's a lot of times it's easier to be like, well, I'm going to therapy and I'm not getting fixed. So you know, I think a lot of people think that therapy is just like, I'm gonna talk to someone and everything's gonna be fixed. And it's a lot more than that.
And same thing with plant medicine. You know, people are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take a bunch of mushrooms, or I'm gonna go to South America and sit with ayahuasca and my whole problems are gonna be fixed. And it's like, that's not how this works, honey. Like you still have to put in a lot of work and, you know, make those changes that you need to do. And so in 2020, I was so desperate. I remember I would have these like really intense panic attacks that the only way that I could really control them was through, and you know, this might be a little intense for some folks, was through self-harm or through just like being in deep depression for days, you know, like it would just put me basically in a coma. And I remember I was driving one day in the highway and I was like spiraling with really negative thoughts, and I had to pull over, and the only way that I could really control that was through like screaming at the top of my lungs, you know. And it was like, yo, clearly something's not okay.
Like something's not okay. Like the universe, your body, everything's telling you,
is
like
yelling at me, literally.
like literally screaming like it's not okay.
And it was so funny, you know, because something in my intuition, like my gut told me, like, I was raised super Catholic, and
I do remember that too.
Yes,
your mom would have the whole like
the altar and everything. Yes, we prayed the rosary. I was an altar kid growing up, and you know, growing up in Catholicism, and I think in Mexican culture, these ancestral traditions are seen as brujeria. And so I kind of like tend to stay away from those practices. But in that moment, something was like, I need to do something different, and I don't know why, but it's like the thought came to mind of like, I need a tarot card reading, and I'm just gonna like look for that and see if they can kind of guide me in a different direction. And it was during 2020, so it was during the pandemic and everything was shut down. So I just like Googled tarot card reader in Denver, clicked on the first profile that I saw, talked to the lady, and she ended up being a medicine woman as well.
Oh my god, I just got the chills.
It was so wild. And she was like, sure. I was explaining to her what I was going through, and she was like, girl, a tarot card reading would be cute. But like,
she's like, all right, girl.
But she's like, I could also do a shamanic journey for you. And she started explaining things like the ancestral realm, spirit guides, you know, healing with different modalities. And I had no idea what that meant, but I was so desperate that I was like, I'll try anything at this point. And she set up a whole meeting. It was virtual. I was like laying on my bed, and we had to meditate with drums, and she opened the sacred space, opened up the energetic realm, and it was like instantly my third eye like blew wide open, and I went into this portal where I looked down, and I'm transported into this different lifetime basically, and I look down and I'm dressed in like indigenous attire, and I'm dancing to the drums that I'm meditating to, and then I get all of these visions of me like in these past lifetimes serving as like a healer, serving as a guide, and got all these different colors and sensations in my body, where I started to recognize where the guilt and the pain was being stored in my body, and specifically in my throat. Because growing up, you know, I think as women, and our dads are very similar, where they have very narcissistic tendencies. And I felt very betrayed by that, you know, not being able to speak up. And, you know, I'm a very fiery person anyway. And so I will speak up, and I always got my ass handed to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely same. I think, and we're both Capricorn women too. And so we're like on top of that. Yeah.
Yes. And so I had debrief with the medicine woman, and she basically was like, you need to stop running from your inner child, and your inner child needs a lot of support in this moment. And so basically I did everything that I could. I went from like 0 to 100, where I'm like, how can I heal myself in a very intentional way? And that's when I started tapping into yoga. And, you know, I remember crying in my first yoga class and not knowing why. And again, understanding that our body really holds on to a lot of emotions and a lot of stress. And yoga is a beautiful medicine practice that can help you release some of that. And so I started practicing yoga like 3 times a day. I would drink herbal teas. I would journal. You know, I would cleanse my whole house. I had like a 3-hour morning routine. And thank God it was the pandemic, because I had nothing else to do.
Yeah, literally. Hey, maybe that was like, I think it was all just divine timing.
Divine timing.
Where like you had the time to actually get started on that. And like, what else were you supposed to do? Literally. You know what I mean?
And what a blessing, you know? What a blessing. And so yeah, that really inspired me to, because, and then there was one moment where I had another panic attack, and all of the work that I had been doing, you know, I was like about to spiral, and then I had this like inner voice come through and was like, Valeria, like, you deserve so much better than this. Like, you deserve more than this. Yeah. And I was able to self-regulate. And for someone that had been, you know, suffering from these uncontrollable PTSD symptoms, to like have that break, it was so empowering to be like, holy shit, like I'm really rewiring my brain. Yeah. That's incredible. And how powerful is that I could do that through yoga, through meditation. And then that's when I was like, everyone needs to learn about all of these practices. You kind of like get into this position where you want to teach others what has helped you, because if I could do it, anyone could do this. Yeah. And that's what really inspired me to go into my yoga teacher training. And once I started teaching yoga, I started tapping into, I mean, it was like this natural gift that I have, where I'm like, oh, I'm guiding people. I'm guiding their breath, their movement. And then I would have these channelings, these out-of-body experiences where I'm teaching the class and I'm kind of in a flow state. And I'm like walking around, I'm like, I don't know what I'm saying right now. It's just kind of like coming through flows.
Me. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I also love that you do it in like bilingual, like Spanish, because I feel like that's one community, or like even for me, like I got into doing yoga too, but for me growing up, I thought it was like this practice that just like rich white ladies would do in their Lululemon outfits. You know what I mean? Like that's what I thought, that's all it was. And so being able to be in those spaces and see that it's also accessible to like anybody really is like, I love that you do that and have that like ability to help those people that don't speak the language, because I don't really know anyone else that is doing that. Yeah,
and that was my initial intention too. And everything that I do really comes from the heart, and it comes from like a heart calling. And that me going into my yoga teacher training really came from me wanting to, share the tools that I had learned to heal myself with other people, but more specifically my immediate family, because I went through those experiences because they are also carrying the same chains that I was carrying. Yeah. And so that opened up the doors for my parents to start doing yoga with me, and for them to start tapping into the spiritual meditative space, and has allowed a lot of healing for us to do as a family as well. So, and so then I started teaching. It's so funny because it's like, oh yeah, I wanted to just teach Spanish yoga on the side, and then it just like cut to like I'm giving people psychedelics, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, how did this happen?
Well, and the thing is, like, you were working like an actual like big girl job, and then so like to see like the transition into you doing your practices. I love that, honestly. I feel like you're in your purpose. So
oh, for sure.
yeah. But I also I see that you do a lot of like meditations and like work with your family, and I love that. But I also like, how were they receptive to it at first, or no? Because like you said, we're like Catholic, like traditional Hispanic, and so even like right now, if I were to tell my family, like my parents, like, let's get on the ground and do some yoga, they'd be like, what the no, we're not. The fuck are you talking about? Like, are you high?
Yeah, no, it's been such a wild journey, and my parents are troopers, honestly. Like, I'm really grateful that they have come along this journey with me. But yeah, at first my mom, you know, she would say like, well, en la misa, en la iglesia nos dicen que eso es del diablo porque está rezando a otros dioses. And, you know, they basically in English, they would say in church that yoga is for the devil because you're praying to different gods, and that's really against the Catholic Church.
Literally, like, I don't go to church often, but I specifically remember going one time and the priest like literally saying like, don't do yoga, don't do this, because you're literally, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is like healing my body, like it's good for my soul. Like, if I'm not hurting anybody or anything, like why are you so against it? Yeah. And they think like the only place of healing is literally like church, and I'm like, no.
Yeah. And the way that I got around that for them was just saying like, you know, because this is what I learned about spirituality and religion in general from my own experience. You know, we would go to like Catholic retreats growing up, you know, and I'm like, girl, I was in it. Like, I was in it. And I remember we would do like these, like, you know, prayer circles where like the Holy Spirit would come down, and like, you know, I would have all these like weird experiences where I'm like speaking in tongues and people are like, oh, tienes el don, whatever. And then once I got into yoga and meditation, I started having very similar experiences too, where I'm like, oh shit, I'm feeling the same thing that I felt. And then that's when it clicked for me that religion is much smaller than spirituality. And the spirituality is a bigger umbrella, and it can take many forms. You know, like I grew up with the Catholic Church, and I still very much relate to the Catholic saints. You know, I pray to La Virgen Maria. I pray to, you know, God, to Jesus. And I also pray to Ganesha. I also pray to Shakti, you know, like all of these different deities, because I understand that in reality, I'm tapping into the same energy. Just the way that it's packaged is different depending on what I need to be nurtured. Yeah. And so I told my parents like, you know, it's all the same energy, Dad. Like, if I'm saying pray to the earth, but you want to pray to Virgen Maria, you can do that. Yeah. And I think that really helped click things for them. But at first, my dad was even like, eso es para mujeres. Like, that's for women. Like, I'm not going to be doing yoga. Yeah. And then, like, I would do, you know, yoga classes in the park, and he'd be like the first one there with his little mat, you know? Yeah. And I think that really helped kind of bridge and for my parents to see that what I was doing wasn't crazy, because then they started to experience it themselves. And so when it did come time for me to heal those, like, you know, when you heal parental wounds especially, you're going to go through it many, many times, many layers. I think the first time that I healed that part of me was a lot of grief, a lot of sadness. Yeah. And then the second time that I went through it, it was like resentment and anger of like, how dare you treat me that way when I was a child? Like, how dare you? And I had to go through a lot of EMDR therapy, a lot of meditations for me to find compassion again for my parents. But once I was able to find compassion and forgiveness and acceptance, and also find the wisdom of those experiences. And I know that's really hard for people to find sometimes, and I get it. Like, life is not fair, and life's like can be really hard sometimes. But if you don't find a way to find that wisdom and also forgive the rest, you're really just hurting yourself. Yeah. So once I was able to find that forgiveness, I really felt it in my heart to communicate to them and kind of like just share, like, hey, Dad, I didn't appreciate those experiences. Yeah. Like, you really broke my heart in a lot of ways. And I'm really angry with you, and I don't want to be angry with you, because that's hurting both of us. Yeah. And so I found a way, because they had already been exposed to meditation and yoga, I found a way to kind of like because my dad is very machista and like very defensive, and so I'm like, if I go in guns blazing and I'm like, you should have done this and you should have done that,
suck.
yeah, literally,
yeah, and they're gonna be like, yeah, my dad's the same way. Like having those conversations, it's very hard because they get defensive too. But I always tell people too, like, I know that he did the best he could with what he had, and obviously he had his own trauma too. So it's a lot of layers,
so many layers, and so I found a way. The best way to heal and to do this work is really to do it through love and compassion.
Yeah.
And first of all, you need to do your inner work first to get through all of the other gunk, the anger, the resentment first, so that you can get to a place where you can really find that forgiveness. So that when you talk to them, you are coming from a really grounded place. Yeah. And my dad, you know, I was just like, one day I called him and I just like, in my soul, I was like, I need to have this conversation like today. Yeah. And I called my siblings and they were down to come too. And so it ended up being like a whole family circle. And I just kind of told everybody very vague. I'm like, we're doing a meditation circle tonight. And then I set up an altar with pictures of my grandparents, with pictures of my siblings and I as children. So again, like I'm setting the space to have a very loving and compassionate conversation. And that also rewires our brain, right? Where we're like, we're not going to be defensive. We're going to just listen and
like
hear.
Setting that intention going in.
Yeah. And the more that you do that, the more receptive people are to those conversations. And it was so beautiful because I also had like a meditation prompt where, you know, we all meditated on our inner child and what was the worst experience of our childhood and the best experience of our childhood, and we all shared those experiences with each other. I love that. And then it also allowed me to heal because I saw the human in my dad. Where he was like, oh, the best experience that I had, it was like when I stole 10 pesos so that I could eat a treat by myself, because he was super, super poor. And so hearing that, you know, and also knowing how abusive his childhood was and how traumatic it was, it just gave me so much love and so much compassion for him.
I think they don't really talk about a lot of those things either. They're taught to like bottle them up and stuff. So honestly, I'm glad you're saying this because I haven't talked to my dad in like 3 months now because of all of the trauma that he has caused, and I finally got to a point where I was like,
I got chills.
I know. I got to the point where I was like, you're causing so much harm and I need to take a step away, and obviously I still love and care about you, but I need to do this for myself. So hearing how you went about it like really kind of inspires me to do the same and to like have those. I've been meaning to have that conversation with him and tell him like, hey, I want to talk to you and be intentional about like, this is why I'm upset. This is what hurts me. This is like, I want us to heal and I want us to move forward, but I need us to really sit down and be there and be uncomfortable with dissecting like what has led us to this point. And
I empower you to do that, and that's fucking powerful. So yeah, that's a very courageous adventure that you're about to embark on, and take your time with it, you know. And you know, I'm very lucky that my parents were very receptive to it, and I also understand that everybody's parental experiences are very different, and for some people the best choice is to step away, is to have that boundary. But yeah, I mean, we've done so much healing as a family, and that my dad is now even like contemplating doing a mushroom ceremony with me. Like slowly but surely I'm kind of slowly working with him. And like this just I'm really blessed to have the parents that I have, that they're kind of supporting me. Of course, like my mom still does the mom thing where she sends me links and where they're like, he ate mushrooms and died, you know.
And they're
also on cocaine and like drinking. That's not what I'm doing.
they did a few other things other than mushrooms for them to get to that point. No, I feel you, and I'm a strong believer that we like choose our parents, you know. And so I know that my parents would be receptive. Like I think my toughest battle has always been with my dad, but I know that he loves and cares about me enough to want to sit down and want to have those conversations, and I know that he cares about me enough to want to change, like to begin that conversation. So it's just a matter of me being able to be in the right headspace to come to him and know that he might not be as receptive or as I would like, but I know that he's willing. And that's my other thing. Like, he, at the end of the day, he's my dad, and he's alive, and he's here. And so I always am so grateful for that. So that's a relationship that I care about, that I want to work on, but I need to work on myself first before I can get there, you know?
Yeah. And be patient with it too. And, you know, I know that if you have that intention, you will get there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I feel like the harshest dads are the softest, like, men.
Yeah.
You know?
No,
like,
literally.
my dad is so soft now.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just also like them knowing that it's safe for them to be soft now, you know, because same thing, you know, growing up, they didn't have the easiest childhood, and they were made to like grow up very, very quickly. So it's never really, it's been survival mode for them their whole life. And I think that's one thing I'm trying to get across to my dad, that it's safe now. Like, he's good now. Like, it's okay now to show emotion, to show love, to show weakness, to whatever he needs to show. Like, he's got a family that will nurture and care about him. And I don't think he ever really had that. So yeah, definitely setting that intention to do that, moving like at some point. I'm not quite there yet, but we'll get there. But you also mentioned about the shrooms, like because shrooms to our family, well, I mean, to like most people are drugs. Like, they're full on drugs. So how did they respond to that?
I mean, again, I'm really blessed that I'm just like, I've always just been the wild child. I've always been like the outspoken one, the fiery one. And they've accepted me that way, and I'm so thankful. But same. I definitely lied to my parents about what I was doing for a very long time. Like, I would just be like, I'm going on a meditation retreat, and meanwhile I'm like tripping, like meeting ancestors, meeting spirit guides, you know. I have the privilege of doing plant medicine ceremonies in Mexico and Ecuador and Puerto Rico, but I didn't feel comfortable really coming forward with those practices until the decriminalization of psychedelics here.
Okay.
Because that gave me a platform to kind of be like, Mom, there's all of these scientific studies that are showing like how healing these practices are, and, you know, the power that they have. And so it just like started very lightly, you know. I'm like,
just like dropping seeds.
And I wouldn't tell her that I was facilitating or I was training on how to work with this medicine. I would tell her that I'm just participating in it, because then like once I told her, I'm like, oh no, I'm actually like the one guiding these ceremonies, and she was like, whoa, that's like a whole other thing too. So it's been like chunks by chunks, you know. And I never push anything on anyone. And, you know, I always try to have so much compassion when my mom discourages me from following certain like paths, and understanding that she's doing it from like a really heart-centered space where she's protecting me and she's worried. And sometimes it does get to me where I'm like, oh, like, should I not be doing this? Like, okay, like
is this a sign?
And then but slowly but surely she's been like also opening up to it, and now she refers to her coworkers to me for like a psilocybin session and stuff. So literally, I'm telling you, I'm like, if you don't force things and you kind of just like
let it,
you let it be, you don't force it, you don't shove any information down people's throats. You're just like, if they ask questions, I answer, but I'm never the one to initiate those conversations.
Be like, hey, you want to go on a retreat, you want to do some shrooms?
No. And that's not how the medicine works, you know. I think the medicine, everything happens for a reason, and it guides people to you for a reason, because you're that person that can hold that space for that specific person. And so I never want to force things at all with
and
it.
I definitely see, like, I love that you call it like plant medicine, because I definitely like, I see it as medicine. Like, it's very healing, and I've like dabbled in shrooms myself, and I've done it like by myself, but even then I'm like on the ground sobbing, crying over like a childhood wound. So like,
it's so beautiful.
It really is
so heart opening. The spirit of the mushrooms, they're known as the Niños Santos, or the holy children. And so there's different types of plant medicine. So for example, there's like peyote, which is really big in the indigenous communities here in North America, and that medicine is said that spirit tells you the truth. Or there's rapé, which is like tobacco, and that medicine gives you power. And then the mushrooms, what they do is they return you back to joy. And it's like, even now I'm like, I want to cry, because they really do. And they open up your heart space, and they connect you back to humanity, which is really what I see the value in this medicine. And yes, the neural pathways, yes, you know, the scientific background, all of that is also important and valuable too. But even just connection, which is something that, especially here in the States, we are starved of.
Yeah.
And it also kind of pulls you away from the bullshit, right? Because we are so consumed by social media and by consumerism and by having more. And, oh, I don't have that, so I can't be happy in my life. And then the mushrooms are kind of just like, yo, chill.
Yeah. Like, you're good. Like, you don't need it. Like, you don't need it all. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a beautiful journey to work with that too.
Yeah. You said your first experience was in Mexico. Your first retreat was in Mexico?
Yeah. So my first official ceremony. Yeah. And I did one mushroom experience here in Colorado with a friend. But again, I've always like had enough conscious to be like, I need to be respectful with this medicine, and journaled the intentions and did yoga to prepare my body. And I don't know, it's just so funny because I think nothing is coincidence, you know. And so I think the medicine was kind of like there waiting for me. And I didn't even take that much, honestly. I don't remember. I think it was like, we didn't even weigh it out. It was just like one kind of like half big mushroom.
Yeah.
And when people tell me about their mushroom experiences where they're like, oh my God, yeah, I just saw colors and this and that. And I'm like, what? Like all my mushroom experiences have been so intense.
Yes. Like there's been a few times where I will like even do it here. And I'm like, I just need to prepare to like, just
for whatever.
Out of commission for the rest of the day. And it's happened to where like, I just end up on the, like, I've had it to where I'm like on my bed or wherever. And I'm just like, out of body, like comforting myself, like my inner child, and so telling her like it's okay to rest, like you don't need, you know. So yeah, but it's but it's definitely like a whole like that's what I tell people. I'm like, I'm not just seeing colors and like shapes.
Yeah, bro.
I'm like on the ground sobbing.
Literally, I'm like, I'm fucking seeing like spirit guides. Like, what do you mean you're just like seeing colors?
Yeah.
So yeah, my first experience, again, I was really working through the PTSD, and like I was so inspired by the idea of neuroplasticity, and that just gave me so much hope, you know, because when you get diagnosed with something like that, and also the experiences that you've gone through, they're not easy.
Yeah.
And so when you're in that darkness, it's really hard for you to find a way out, where you're like, there's no way that I can ever feel better. Yeah. You know? And so I was so inspired by that idea, and so that's what pushed me to try mushrooms. And when I took them, we took them out in nature, which I think, again, everything is like so perfectly designed. And it was kind of like a welcoming home. And again, I took the mushrooms and we like went out hiking, and we like found a tree, and right away I started hearing drumming again. And wild, dude, wild. And so then I could hear Mother Nature talking to me. Like I could hear Father Son talking to me. Like all the elements were coming around me and welcoming me, like basically like, welcome home. Yeah. We've been waiting for you. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's so beautiful. And one of the main messages that came through that trip was I don't know, mushrooms also put me to work, bro. Like mushrooms, they also have a way of kind of, I guess, using humans to kind of bring in more love and more light into the world through different projects. And right away, Mother Nature was like, you are going to be a bridge and a connector of this medicine for other people, and you're going to bring them back here to me, so like the earth, and you're going to give them mushrooms, and I will reconnect them back to themselves, and I will reconnect them back to love.
The way I just keep getting chills. I just keep getting chills.
Girl, you're telling me.
Yeah,
I'm like
I keep getting chills.
I think it's also like, for context, right? Like I grew up in Aurora.
Yeah.
Like for me to believe like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do plant medicine and like go to Mexico and go to South America and quit my 9 to 5, like a big girl, like 9 to 5. I'm like, this is not something that has been planned whatsoever. Like it has taken a lot of courage and a lot of sacrifice to be able to do this. But I do it because it's really coming from my heart center. It's really coming from a higher purpose, something that's bigger than me, something that's bigger than, you know, the people that I serve even, you know. And so that's really what keeps me grounded when things get really hard, because living a purposeful life, yes, it's so beautiful and things are so much more aligned, and it's not easy. Yeah,
no, there's so much work that you got to do within yourself, so much ego death, like it's, and
you have to face all of your fears. And again, that's perfectly designed by spirit.
Yeah.
You know, so for example, like if you're called to do a podcast, but you're scared of speaking your truth, well, you're going to work on that right now. You know?
Quick. Yeah, no, definitely. And like that's the thing. Like you come across shit that you like weren't even expecting to like be brought up. Cause even just with this podcast, like there's so much stuff that has come up and I'm like, do I really like I could just go hide and be comfortable. Like I could just not do it, you know what I mean? But then you just keep getting that calling where it's like, no, you have to. Like, sorry, baby, but it's you. This is your purpose. This is what you got to do. And it's uncomfortable, but you got to do it.
Yeah. So going back to so I did that trip and that seed was planted of, you know, okay, this medicine wants to work with me in some capacity, but like, literally when Mother Nature told me that, now I'm like, okay, it all makes sense. But back then I'm like, girl, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm going to give what to who? Like, what does this even look like?
Well, and I think the way I would have seen it too is like just being like practical about it. Like how practical is it to just be like, hey, this is what I'm going to dedicate my life to, and like, you know, bills are still due at the end of the day, so like how do you like do all of this, you know? You went to Ecuador too for like a few months.
I was there for 3 months. Again, that was a calling from the mushrooms too. Like it was so fucking wild. So I again, I just was kind of like the thing when spirit plants a seed in your heart, do one action step forward and then spirit will kind of take the rest. So for example, when I got that, you know, that calling to work with the medicine, I'm like, okay, let me just start Googling psilocybin facilitator trainings or holistic facilitator trainings, which again is so specific, right? But again, I'm like, the algorithm, the FBI agent, spirit, whoever it was, they came through. And I was able to find like a couple of teachers willing to kind of guide me. And part of that...
Sorry, but I'm like, even just with when you wanted that tarot reading, like, right? Like,
yes. And then it turned out to be a whole, like, whole journey.
Thing, so, but anyways.
So everything is divinely guided, like you say. So then I went to Mexico. There was like a 3-month virtual training where like you learn the history, you start diving into what it means to hold energetic space. And being a yoga teacher and also hosting like women's circles already, I have some, and my intuition is really strong, so I kind of am naturally gifted in that way. But when you add psychedelics, it adds a level of mysticism that is like intense, man. It is really intense. And so they were kind of teaching us those ways. And then we flew out to Mexico and we participated in ceremonies where we would take turns, basically like, okay, you're going to facilitate, and then the rest of the group is going to take medicine. And then the next night, okay, we're going to switch, like, and kind of practice that way. And I think we did like 6 ceremonies.
Oh, wow.
So
that's
intense.
A lot. Yeah,
so
I'm like,
intense.
I feel like that's just like even like very like exhausting. I feel like I would be tired after that. Like,
oh, for sure.
It's so like energetically, physically, like.
Yes. And, you know, it's not just like, let me practice on mushrooms. It's like, no, you're taking mushrooms and you're going to dive into your subconscious and something's going to come up, or, you know, it's going to show you a lot. And that's the way of the medicine path too. People think that it's like, okay, I'm gonna just set an altar and have sage and, you know, have it be cute or whatever. It's like, nah, bro. Like, if you're really walking this path, again, it's gonna show you your deepest, darkest like parts of you that you need to integrate, because you are going to then call in the same people that probably have similar wounds. And if you haven't integrated those experiences, how are you expected to hold that space for them? You have to walk through that fire too. Like you have to be the first one to take that step, which is like scary too. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And so in that journey, I was like initiated by spirit guides. And we all have spirit guides. Everybody has, they can be ancestors, or they can be people that have passed, or, you know, a lot of animals come through. And the jaguar came through for me in one of those ceremonies in the land of my ancestors, which is like so special. And the jaguar is
like, you have a tattoo, right?
Yeah,
I saw that. Your tattoos are so dope.
Thank you.
So cute.
Yes, I got this one in Ecuador. It only took 3 hours, dude. Like, the guy was
I love it. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, and so I honor her so much, and she, in the shamanic traditions, the jaguar is the animal that guides you to your darkness. And so again, if like that's the animal that's being presented to me, what kind of a path can I expect for my role? And but like the jaguar can see both in the lightness and the dark, you know, and she walks around with a lot of ferocity and
you definitely give that energy all around 110%.
Yes, a lot of courage, a lot of strength, but also tapping into that feminine energy and going into the darkness so that you can find the light. And so she also guides me a lot in ceremonies, especially when things get intense in ceremony. She just kind of comes through. And I even start like prowling like a jaguar in ceremony. And this is like I'm sure I've done this for many lifetimes, that when I'm in ceremony, I kind of go into a state of flow, and whoever I can see entities, I can see energies, and, you know, I'm able to kind of move through that with so much ease and so much like calm because of the training that I've done, because of the experiences that I've, you know, gone through. And, you know, anything that I see in ceremony, you better believe I've been through it personally too. Like even extracting entities from myself. Oh my gosh. Yeah, dude. Like it's not, I'm telling you, like this isn't just like for fun.
It's not like, hey, we're gonna go do some shroomies and we're gonna have a good time. Yeah,
it's like, oh no, bro. There's like so much more to this. But you know, it's all for a purpose, and it's all for a greater humanity, a more compassionate humanity, a more loving humanity, which is what we need in this moment.
Most definitely. And that's connection that we've known. I mean, I feel like we lack. Like we're like we're on the internet, we're on whatever, and we feel like we're connected, but it's not even.
No. And that's what I love about retreats too, is that you get to cultivate such deep spaces, authentic spaces where people are really truly seen for who they are. Yeah. And that's very rare.
And it's the same people, like people with the same, like, you know, intentions and same heart, and like that want to do the same kind of work, which is, I've always loved to, like, I've never done a retreat like that, but just being in those spaces with people that are like-minded is so healing with, like, in itself, you know, just being able to be seen and like heard and feel like you can just let your guard down.
And that's rare. That's rare to have in this space, and to be seen for your humanness without judgment. That's rare. Because we have been portrayed this like mask of perfectionism and this and that. I'm like, I have no problem even being like a healer myself. I have no problem admitting that, of course, I still have things to work on. Course, you know, I'm not going to be perfect. And if you have a healer that is like high almighty, that's a big red flag. Like you should probably not be working with them.
No, definitely. Like, let me heal you. Like that's
no. But yeah, it's been a beautiful journey, and so I was initiated by the jaguar. She guides me, she protects me, she also protects the spaces that I hold. And during that time, I was also just like being called like, girl, you're wasting your time at your job. Like you need to grow in other ways. And I'm like, but how am I gonna pay bills? Like what am I and then the mushrooms told me at one point, you know, they even give you like specific timelines. They're like, they told me, quit your job by June and just know that you're going to be going somewhere. Know that you're going to be leaving to go someplace. So start preparing, start saving, start moving things around, because you're going to need to do that. Wow. And without knowing anything. And so I just got back from that training, those ceremonies, called my supervisor right away, and I had no plan, and I was just like, hey, I'm quitting in June, by the way. Like that's what I'm going to be moving towards. And I just trusted that along the way I would get signs, and I would get, you know, messages of where to go, and I would just journal. And I think a couple months later, I started saving up for sure. And what it meant to be like, okay, the logistics of it, you know, like, okay, because I own my house with my sister. So I'm like, who's going to pay the mortgage when I'm gone? Or, you know, my dog, like who's going to take care of my dog? And starts to really plant seeds for how that was going to be taken care of. And budgeting, you know, creating different offerings that would allow me to support my dream and the vision that I was being called to do. Which forced me to grow in so many ways around mindsets around money. And especially working in the spiritual space, and also coming from, you know, people of color, we have so much shame around money. And there's like this whole idea that also if you're a spiritual worker, you shouldn't be asking for money. And it's like, yo, that was true when we lived in a different society where the healer would be taken care of. They would be offered shelter, food, you know. Homegirl, we don't live in that reality anymore. Yeah. And you can't pay me in chickens and eggs. Yeah. Like, that's not going to pay the bills, you know? And also recognizing that I had really negative mindsets around money. Yeah. That having money is bad. Yeah. That asking for money for your natural gifts is bad. But it's like, what? That's like the best way to honor yourself, honor your work, and make it more sustainable for you. Yeah. And also, anytime that I've also gone to many retreats and have done many investments where I've had to figure it out. I've had to empty out my savings or get a second job because I don't want money to be a limiting thing for me. Yeah. And you have to figure it out. And also, when it's all said and done, when I invest all of that money and I get that experience, I'm like, bro, I would have paid 3 times more than what they asked. It's like there's the energy work within the spiritual space. It's priceless. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. Well, and I'm like, I'm a strong believer, like money's a currency. So like you will invest it and it's going to come back to you like tenfold. Yes. But Chills. A lot, confirmed. But yeah, like I feel like you're right. A lot of us have that like lack mentality, especially when you grow up not having money. Like it's something you don't want to talk about. It's something that you feel ashamed about. So yeah, it's a very difficult thing to just like be like, hey, my work and I am worth something, and I am gonna use this as a means to be able to share my gifts, to share your gifts, and to and know that there's always a greater plan, and that it's always going to be meant to serve the collective good at the end of the day. By serving yourself, by going on these experiences so that I could learn the skills to hold space for other people, that's me continuing to serve the community, continuing to serve the collective. And it's not selfish. And also, you know, we've been taught that like people that have money or the people that have wealth are bad. Evil. They're evil. But yeah, so I had journaled the day before, like, God, give me a sign. Where do I need to go? The medicine woman reached out to me. She's like, you know, I know you've been working with mushrooms. I know a mushroom teacher here. Maybe you can work with him. I wrote out ideally what that situation would look like. So he would let me stay at his retreat center. He would let me support the mushroom ceremonies there just so I could deepen my experience. And if I absolutely needed to make some extra cash while I was there, he would let me use his space to host, you know, women's circles or cacao ceremonies or whatever it is, yoga classes. And I talked to him the next day, and like, I didn't even ask him anything, and word for word, he said exactly what I wrote down. And I was like, okay. And then he kind of gave me a budget for like what to expect in terms of lodging. And thankfully Ecuador is like super, super cheap and convenient. So I built a budget around that, and I was still kind of hesitant. I'm like, I'm still kind of worried about this. Like, I don't know. And then sure enough, I would just have repeating dreams of little mushrooms following me around, like little mushroom emojis. And then the deciding factor, at my job, we had a new coworker start, and her best friend actually lived in the same town that I was going to go into. And he had gone to the mushroom teacher's birthday party. What? And that's when I was like, okay, like I need to go. Like, I'm going there. Yeah.
What? Like, that's the thing. And like, I'm like, what are the odds? But literally, like, everything's just connected.
Everything connected. And so I trusted it too. And I also just kept getting these sensations that I was about to go through like a very intense portal. Like, of course, you know, because I'm leaving behind all the world that I know, having a 9-to-5, living in the States, you know, having comfort. And then, you know, now, and I'm also a Capricorn, right? So I'm like, I've had like probably like side hustles, like as long as I could remember. And to go from that to like going to South America, staying for 3 months, not having my family around, my dog, which is like a huge support system for me, and not working, so not having any distractions or anything, and kind of just sitting. Yeah. And then sure enough, within the first week of Ecuador, it was like, oh, everything that I knew, everything that I thought was stable, just like burned to crumbs. Yeah. And the teacher that I was working with, he's also a Reiki master. And so he's like, you know, I feel like Reiki is a good tool for you to have. And I've heard about Reiki, but, you know, kind of just like was like never really interested in it. And then that was the shit that like really initiated me in a lot of ways. because Reiki is opening up your channels to clear source energy. And so if it's energy of such high vibration, anything within you that is sitting in the darkness, that's just gonna bubble up.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's when he helped me kind of take out the entity out of my body that was attached to a lot of abandonment wounds from my childhood. And so I had to work through that too. Again, revisiting abandonment wounds, revisiting rejection, revisiting heartbreak, revisiting, you know, being alone, and kind of like learning how to find my strength again in that space. And that was before even going to my first mushroom ceremony there. And so going to my first mushroom ceremony there, I'm like, I know I'm about to go through it.
Yeah, like go through it.
Yeah. And sure enough, I just had an ego death at that time.
Just a little casual ego there.
So I experienced kind of like that death of that life that I was living, and kind of really letting it go. And what people don't really talk about is that in-between space, you know, where you're like, yeah, I'm letting go of this, but I still don't clearly know what I'm working towards now. And that space is so uncomfortable. Yeah. But again, everything is divinely orchestrated. And at the same time, I'm like living in South America. I'm meeting all these plant medicine people. There's all of this medicine all around me where I could be held. I'm like on the beach, you know what I mean? I'm like life is not bad. Yeah. If this is what I'm going through emotionally, but I'm here physically, I'm like, okay, things aren't that bad.
Yeah. That's so cool. I'm like, and you were out there for 3 months. That's a long time.
Yeah, and being alone, and also like building relationships with people out there. And thankfully God again sent really great people my way that were able to support me and hold me in that time. And that's also what really humbled me as a healer, is you have to go through that shadow, because if not, you forget how hard it is. And so when people come to you and you don't have that compassion because you've forgotten how painful it is to heal, you're doing everyone a disservice. And if you're avoiding your things too, you're not progressing either. So that was a really great reminder for me to be like, okay, I need to be more compassionate, or yes, I can feel how difficult it is to heal, and I can hold people with more love and more compassion because I have held so much grief.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you like actually you do the work, and like it's a continuous thing. It's not like you do one thing and it's like, okay, I'm healed.
No. That's the biggest joke ever, man. That is the biggest joke. And again, like if you find healers that are like that, run away. Run away. They're not centered, they're not grounded. And even spiritual people that are so up in the space, the galaxy, where I'm like, if I don't know, there needs to be a balance of connection to spirit and also being grounded in this reality. Because again, we chose to be humans, and we chose to live this experience.
Like at the end of the day, you're still very much human.
We didn't come to earth to be up in the spirit realm all the time. But it's so many learnings and teachings came from that too. And then as I was also healing myself and learning, I was also holding space, because there's so many people there that are willing to partake in these traditions, you know. And even when I would go to other ceremonies and I wasn't a facilitator, the medicine would intentionally plan things so that at one point I would have to step in and help facilitate. And I couldn't see that coming, but it was like, I know that I needed to be at that ceremony so that I could serve that specific person, because the other facilitators maybe didn't have the right tools or the right compassion for that person in that moment. It's wild.
You just like felt called to be there.
And sometimes like especially when I'm not facilitating, I hesitate to step in. But I've learned that my intuition is always guiding me. And especially when I have taken medicine, the medicine is also guiding me too. So there's been times where I'm like, they're like, yo, this person needs some Reiki right now. And I'm like, nope, this is not my ceremony. Like, I don't want to disrespect people. Like, I'm just going to sit here. And they're like, this is why we brought you here. Hello, you're doing him a disservice if you don't offer this. And then sure enough, you do Reiki, and you like also help move energy. You also help heal them. And we all do our part in ceremony. In ceremony, everything is perfect and nothing is by accident.
Love that.
Yeah.
And well, you have a retreat coming up in Puerto Rico too, right?
Yeah. So I was able to meet like my soul family in Ecuador. Most of them were Boricuas though, which is so crazy.
Yeah, like
we all met in South America for a retreat, and then they're all plant medicine people and all facilitators. So they invited me last year to go to their land and help them facilitate a retreat. And wow, Puerto Rico is so beautiful. And that land, I think the Caribbean in general right now is a very heavy epicenter for healing because of the Taino massacres.
Yeah.
And all of that energy is condensed and it's sitting on that land. And anytime that I go there, I can feel that anytime that I hold space there, I can feel that we're kind of moving some of that energy out, and the earth wants that. It wants to be healed and it wants to disperse that energy. And same thing here in Colorado. Actually, I had a ceremony in Ecuador where I asked the medicine, like, because I'm like, it could be so easy for me to just do my work here. I have connections, I have people that I know, I have access to the medicine. The medicine here is more acceptable, you know, all of the things. And the mushrooms were like, nah, girl, like, there's a reason why you're Mexican and you can speak the Western perspective, but you have been exposed to ancestral practices, so you can speak both languages. And there's a reason why there's like a policy shift happening in your hometown in Colorado. And Colorado is like the dead heart of the United States. And the United States is getting ready to go through a massive shift of consciousness to bring in more light, because it is needed. And I have met so many people in South America and other places where they're basically like, oh, the US is such a hot mess, like that's why I had to like run away and come to South America. And the medicine was like, there needs to be leaders that are ready to take on this first wave of people that are going to be waking up and need other people to guide them, not from the outside, but creating change from within.
You can't just like run off and like, be like, okay, well, good luck, guys.
And it needs to come from within. And you know, again, it's like a huge responsibility, because then I'm like, fuck, man, like that means I have to like talk about psychedelics in the US, like where people, there is a lot of stigma, there is a lot of but again, all of these missions are divinely orchestrated so that I can grow and so that I can also give back to the community.
And I think the right people also gravitate, so that's what helps. But I you're right, like it's interesting that it's happening in Colorado, that it just became like, is it legalized? It's legalized, right?
It's decriminalized. It's in the process of legalization. And they actually just released last week guidelines too for facilitators. Because the first kind of like iteration of the policy was just like, this is going to be purely for therapists, you know? And then it's like, wait, you're making this something private to Western medicine when this is ancestral. This is meant to be held in community. This is meant to be held in love, in you know, with Mother Earth. Like, I strongly believe that.
And not again, just like in a doctor's office.
Where you're just like chilling. You know, and you know, experiences are gonna call to different people, and so I do agree that there needs to be different options just for, you know, to serve as many people as possible. But of course, you know, in the States, nothing happens from the heart, you know. There's always like a private corporation or, you know, other movement that we need to be mindful of. And so I'm at least thankful that there's an avenue for like holistic practitioners to now get licensed through it. So that's, again, this is the first wave of this, so we're gonna kind of figure it out as we go. But and also there's like a lot of therapists that will sit with you with the medicine, but they've never taken medicine before, and that is mind-blowing to me. I'm like, what? They're like, that's like being a driving instructor without you ever having driven a car. What? That's wild.
And well, that's what I'm saying, like back to saying like, you do the work, like you're the first one to like step into that fire first, and that's what I like appreciate, that you're not just like giving people shrooms and be like, hey, good luck, like I'm here if you need me, but like you figure it out. No, and that's like
that's
the empathy part of it, like you know what it is, you know what it's like, you know the ego death that comes from it, like you know that it requires patience and empathy.
Yeah. No, thank you for saying that. Yeah. It's so true. And it really is like the life path. This is the medicine path. We learn through our own experiences so that we can hold other people that will probably go through the same thing.
That's why I wanted to bring you on, because I want people to know that you're here, you're available. There's other like-minded people that have these spaces, that hold these spaces, that are doing this amazing fucking work. So yeah, if you want to say a little bit about what you're doing, what you have coming up, how they can find you.
Yeah, no, and thank you so much for also including me in this. It's really been a great conversation.
Yes, definitely.
Really happy to share the experiences that I've gone through. But yeah, so I do have a couple of retreats coming up. I have not all of my retreats are plant medicine either. I have a women's retreat coming up here in Colorado in May. I have a Puerto Rico spiritual retreat that is co-ed in May as well. And then I have a psychedelic retreat coming up in March. I facilitate out of a psychedelic church here in Denver. So we are covered liability wise and federally protected. So yeah, you can find me at Yoga Valiente on Instagram or V for Valiente on Instagram as well. My website is yogavaliente.com, and I will be going through like a rebrand soon, actually, just because my vision is getting bigger and Spirit is really calling me to build with other people, and so shifting things around is going to allow for that. And again, just whatever you need. I also do one-on-one personal healings, whether it's Reiki or breath work. I also do one-on-one psilocybin sessions as well. And really my intention with this is to help you cultivate a stronger relationship with yourself, with spirit, to come back to humanity, to come back to love, and to also hold you as you're walking through your darkness and knowing that you're not alone, and that eventually we will all create our own light. We will all find our own light. And that this life path is wild and that you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really, really do appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your experiences. I'll include her links down below because she does amazing work, and I cannot wait to see everything that you do. I'm always just watching you and lovingly from afar, but it's so good to see you and sit down with you and to have you on my as a guest here, because I'm telling you, you were top of the list. So thank you.